Alright, in this video I'm going to attempt to explain a little bit about splits and layers and how you can just kind of bring in more things into a program to make it a little bit more dynamic. Alright, so what I got here is just a regular piano sound. Nothing fancy. What is nice to add to a piano is just kind of like a simple pad sometimes, especially if you're playing on like a Saturday night service or one of those smaller services where there's not very many instruments. It's nice to kind of just bring in some other layers and stuff to help fill out the sound. So to turn a pad on, I need to look at my synth section here, and as you can see, there's nothing turned on. So the first thing I need to do is I need to hit the on-off button here. Okay, so now that section is turned on. What you'll see now is kind of like a blinking 3-dash light on the screen here. There's a few different things that you can select here with this button right here. It says SAMP, which is short for sample, and then there's FM, wave, and a few other shapes. Basically all the functions that aren't sample are just like a whole bunch of different ways that you can make your own synth sound from scratch. I don't ever really do that. I always just go to the samples, and these are like basically pre-made sounds that already sound good without you having to make it from scratch. So with the light pointing to SAMP or sample, I'm going to turn the knob right here under the screen. For now, I'm actually going to go to pad 132. This is my go-to pad. I think it just sounds good with everything. So 132, and it's called ambient strings. So let's hold down a G chord and see what we got. Okay, so a couple of things I'm noticing that I might want to change about the sound. Number one, the pad is kind of quiet. And number two, it sounds very dry. I may want more of a warm sound, like a wet sound. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do to fix it is just fix the volume. I'm going to turn it up a bit, and I'm going to go to this for that. Okay, that's probably loud enough. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to change the texture of the sound so it's not so dry anymore. And for that, I'm going to go to this dial right here. It says FREQ, and that stands for frequency. So if I turn it down, turn it down to about 1 o'clock. And now that I've turned it down, usually when you turn this down, the pad will also sound a little bit quieter. So I'll turn that up as well. And we got a little bit more prominence back in the pad. The thing to know about the frequency is that there's definitely times in a song where a higher frequency might be good. Usually when there's more drums and the song is just more climactic. When you don't want to have a high frequency, in particular, is when someone is talking. If the preacher is on the stage praying or something like that, that's kind of abrasive, right? And the reason is because when you have it that high, you're actually bringing the pad up to the same frequency that people talk in, and the person's voice is going to be competing with the pad. If you have it down here, it's just at a much lower frequency, so it's not going to be distracting people while the preacher is talking. So now that I've got a pad layered with my piano, one of the other things I might want to do is bring in a split and have it so that the pad only goes to a certain section on the keyboard, which would allow me to play some higher notes without getting some really high pads in there as well. So to do that, I'm going to bring in a split. I'm going to hit this button right here. You've got two options here. You got 2, which will bring in just one split, which will divide the keyboard in half, or 3, which will put the keyboard into 3 sections. I'm just going to hit 2. That green light indicates where my split is. Okay, so currently, once I hit that button, automatically what happened with the piano is it just went to the top section. So now I don't have piano down there anymore. It's only past that green light. To fix that, I'm going to hold down Shift and hit that button until all 3 lights are lit up. Now the piano is going across the whole keyboard again. What I want is to make the pad only go to the bottom section. I don't want to hear any pad up here. So to do that, again, I hold Shift, and I just hit this button until the light indicates that it's only on the bottom half. So now I can kind of do this. Now, one other thing that might be cool is if we had a different piano sound up here altogether. Now to do that, we need to bring in another piano, and for that we're going to need to go to a different slot. You can only have one instrument from each section, so we got an organ section, a piano section, and a synth section. You can only have one each per slot, but we have 2 slots. So if I hit the B slot, nothing is active on the B slot. I can bring in a piano, and maybe just for variety's sake, we will do an electric piano sound. So I've turned that on, and it's there. You can't really tell so well because it's layered completely over top of the piano and in the same octave. If I were to hit this octave button right here to make it go higher, my electric piano is now an octave higher than my grand piano, and it kind of gives me that kind of cool 8th note sound. But what I want to do is I want to make it so that the electric piano is only going to be operating in that top section. So I hold down the shift button, I hit that button again until it demonstrates to me that it's only happening in the top half of the section. So I can still play regular piano down here. And up here I have no pad and kind of more of an 8th note piano now. Maybe what I want to do is actually get rid of the grand piano up here, because again up here I've got 2 pianos layered over top of each other. And to do that, you hit shift, make it so that the light indicates that it's only active on the bottom. And to do that I had to switch back to my A slot. And now I can do something like this. Now the electric piano up here is pretty high. I would go back to my B slot and then I would hit that octave down button, so instead of it making that really annoying high-pitched sound, you can have it make something a little bit nicer. So now I've got kind of a pretty cool program going now. I've got my regular piano down here, I've got it layered with a pad all the way up to here, and then up here I got a regular electric piano kind of just layered with nothing, so that I can play something that kind of sounds like this. Just as one last thing, why don't we try to add an organ into this bottom section too, because sometimes a soft organ mixes really nicely with a pad. So I don't have an organ active on either of my slots, just to kind of keep it mostly everything on the same slot. I'm gonna go back, I went back to my A slot, and then I'm gonna turn on the organ. Alright, so a couple things, that's quite loud, and it's also very low. So the first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna turn it down a little bit. Halfway sounds good. I'm gonna hit that octave button maybe twice. The organ, again, still sounds pretty low, and it's not so much because we didn't hit the octave button, didn't make it go high enough. It's actually because of the drawbars here. Basically, you have 9 different drawbars, and the lower end here is kind of like the low end, and the more you bring up here, the higher sound you're going to get out of the organ. So that's quite different from what we just had just by turning down some of the, or I guess turning up some of those drawbars. So one thing I notice now is that it's not sustaining when I use the sustainer pedal. So that's because this light is off right here. It says sust ped, which is short for sustainer pedal. To turn that on, I kind of just look at the button that it's under, and then I hold down the shift, hit that button, that light is on. It'll sustain for us. I don't think I like this organ very much, so I'm going to turn it down a little bit. Just bring it down some of that high end. Maybe I might turn down mostly the mid section. Still not a big fan of this organ, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn this section on, and this little area is just kind of an effect section for the organ. So I turn that on. Alright, so I got the light on under organ here. There's organ, piano, synth, and basically they all have a slightly different effect, and this dial does something as well. If you turn it all the way up, it sounds awful, and it basically kind of sounds like overdrive on an electric guitar. So I usually just keep that down all the way. Now if you look here, the 3 lights indicate that the organ is moving across the whole thing. So if I try to go to use my electric piano up here, I don't really want the organ up here. I kind of just want it down here. Now it's only down there. Alright, so after a lot of tweaking, a lot of turning stuff on and off and adjusting sounds, we have like a pretty cool program now for something that you could play with just a guitar in a smaller worship setting.